Hey guys, welcome to a special edition of the Cover 2 podcast. I'm Jared Smith.
And I'm Nenad.
And we're coming to you this evening, on Monday evening, in a rare appearance. And that is because 2 days ago on Saturday, for those of you who are living under a rock, who are sports fans, Andrew Luck, the now former quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, has officially retired in a very shocking turn of events. And basically, Nick and I are here to give our thoughts, our opinions.
Yes.
If you have any thoughts or opinions about this, if you're a Colts fan, please tune in. Let us know your opinions, what you think about this. There are so many reporters, so many people who have given their thoughts. Many people backing Andrew Luck, saying that it's obviously his decision, and because of all the injuries and the wear and tear that his body has taken, basically he has lost his love of playing football. There are others, particularly one person I will not name, but who works for Fox Sports 1, who says that this is, quote, a very millennial thing to do to retire under these circumstances and in the way that he did. So let's just jump right into it. Nick, so obviously Saturday, the Colts are actually playing in their third preseason game. And it's kind of like the tune-up game. Usually that's when a lot of the starters play. You get to really see what your team is going to be like for the regular season. Andrew Luck was not playing in that game. He was still nursing a calf injury. And during that game, Adam Schefter of ESPN reported and basically broke the original story that Andrew Luck was going to retire. And the reports were that he was actually going to wait until Sunday or Monday and have a news press conference. But once he found out that the news was out, he basically said, I have to go out and speak to the people right now. So, Nick, what are your thoughts on this situation? There's a lot that's been said. Talk to me.
I mean, this is such a shocking thing to happen. We're sitting here because we were going to record our NFL predictions podcast.
Which we still are, by the way.
We still are right after this recording, but we wanted to go live because we wanted to give our opinions on this because we know this has been the talk of the world the last 2 days. With so much at stake in fantasy football and season tickets and the overall just AFC conference, this affects so much, and it comes out of absolutely nowhere. And even Andrew Luck in his press conference said that he'd kind of been thinking about this for the last 2 weeks. So even for him, it's kind of coming out of nowhere for him too. My thoughts on this, obviously I said I'm shocked. I have a lot of mixed feelings about how this whole thing went down. I think it is disappointing that Andrew Luck didn't get to go out on his own terms, per se, that it was leaked to the media that he was going to retire during the game. Unfortunately, he got booed by his own hometown
That's
fans.
just disgraceful. Come on, man.
It is. And for the fans' sake, I can understand where they're coming from. A lot of people in that stadium have been drinking, and you hear the news of Andrew Luck retiring, your franchise quarterback, your Dak Prescott, your Kyler Murray retiring in the middle of the freaking game. There's going to be a lot of people that were emotional already watching that game, having seen a lot of the starters. It's the most NFL-like preseason game, and people were mad. I can understand it somewhat. I think, what I'm saying, I think it's a little different, and obviously a lot of people in Indiana don't have a lot to do. Okay, this is their life.
All right. That's how we're gonna go.
This and the Pacers and Notre Dame are all people of Indiana. People of Indiana have. No, I'm just kidding, guys. Not really, but we'll move on. Okay. So, and going on Andrew Luck's side of this, I completely understand it. The guy is a smart dude, and I'm not just saying that because he went to Stanford. This is an issue with a lot of football players that goes kind of under the weather, per se. That these guys are getting beaten up and they're hurt all the time, and a lot of guys sacrifice years of their life trying to play this game. And Andrew Luck he's already kind of proven himself. He's made his money. He's built a future foundation for his family. But he was, I believe I saw a statistic that said he was the most hit quarterback the last 3 or 4 years. And when a quarterback gets hit, it's a lot more brutal sometimes than some other guys because they're having to just accept the hit without lowering their shoulder or without lowering their helmet or putting in their own power. They're standing there throwing the ball, getting hit in the damn chest. Or for a lot of years, Andrew Luck, because their tackles were terrible, was getting hit from behind. And their offensive line was finally good last year, but the damage had already been done. And shoulder injuries, out for a year, ankle injuries. I understand where he's coming from. It's not shocking to hear the answer of why he's retired. It's just shocking when he did it. And that's what I want to turn it to you, because this is my biggest gripe with the whole thing. It's not the fans. It's not the actual retirement itself. It's why did he do this so late in the season after your team's essentially last preseason game? Why did he do this to the fans, and why did he do this to his teammates?
See, I think that the people that are against Andrew Luck on this are going to say, if you look back at Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson, just other players off the top of my head who retired more or less abruptly, or maybe when they had, maybe when they're in their early 30s, or they still had some game left to play, right? Those guys retired in the offseason, basically letting the organization know, hey, I'm not going to be here, and the organization was therefore able to move into a different direction. So the naysayers are going to say, well, Andrew Luck basically just kind of screwed his own team because you're getting ready, and in less than 2 weeks, the Colts will be lining up for week 1 of their regular season game, and they will now not have their franchise quarterback. My argument to that, and this is backing Andrew Luck, is the fact that, listen, you're right. I don't think Andrew Luck has, I think like he said, he was not lying. For the last few years, I think he's been in his own head because he's had so many injuries, and every offseason he hasn't been able to just focus on football.
Yeah.
He's been having to focus on healing his body. And from playing sports and from being injured, I know just from being injured for a few months, like the toll it can take on you, not just from a physical standpoint, but mentally. And so for Andrew Luck, for offseason after offseason after offseason of having to repair his body, I can see how that takes a toll on one person.
100%. Yes.
What I think, why I think he did it now was because I don't think he was actually going to retire, or when this offseason came and when these preseason games started, I don't think his mindset was to retire. I think he was seriously trying to get himself ready, and he just literally at a certain point probably just said to himself, my body can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
I can't do the rehab anymore, for whatever the reasons may be. So I think that he was trying his very best to, exhaust every opportunity to get himself ready back on the field. And I think at the end of the day, he just had to say, listen, I'm throwing in the towel. I know this isn't the best timing, but this is right for him. It's right for his family. And here's another thing I want to bring up, and I actually heard this today. Listened to a radio station on the way home, and I think this is something that not many people are talking about. In today's age, in today's sports, professional athletes make a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, football players and basketball players and soccer players make more than maybe hockey players, but at the end, these guys are still millionaires, right? So, as opposed to professional players in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that didn't make as much money, they had to play longer and had to have more longevity in their careers to make more money. To whereas Andrew Luck, off the top of my head, he's easily made $75 million?
No,
like
that's
just on his contract alone, not even endorsements. So he is set for life, like you mentioned. He's going to be able to take care of his family for generations and generations to come. And I think with athletes in today's world, they're saying, listen, I don't have to play 10, 15 years in order to make money and make a name for myself and become successful. Yes, there are the Tom Brady's of the world that are very rare that are playing in their 20th years. The Kobe Bryants and those guys. But a lot of times, athletes, because they make so much money now through their contracts and their endorsements, you play 3, 4, 5 years and you're a pretty good player, you're going to make millions of dollars and you're going to be able to set yourself up for the future. And I think that's why you're potentially going to start to maybe see more athletes retire at an earlier age while their bodies are still intact. Yeah. And you're not going to see these players, in their late 30s who are just literally, they look like they're an 80-year-old hunched back because they've literally exhausted, given everything they've had. So from that standpoint, I think Andrew Luck literally said, I'm secure financially, my body can't take it anymore, I'm going to step away. Yes. And unfortunately, it's not the best time, maybe for everyone else, but it's the best time for me.
100%. And his wife is also pregnant as well, which I think does have a big that is a big factor to this. That the family element, his wife is struggling obviously with a pregnancy. He's struggling with injuries. He's not happy. There's a lot of people around America that aren't happy with their jobs, whether it's reasons like this or whether there's other reasons at stake. But I do want to go back because I understand all that and I agree with that, and I don't have a problem with him actually retiring. The one thing was, so when he first announced this, initially my first reaction was, how could you do that to the Colts and their fans? Then I kind of, I tweeted something out quickly after I found out. And then I kind of thought in my head, I'm like, you know what? Because I was starting to hear the grumblings and why he retired. And I was like, And I watched the press conference. And there was a couple giveaways in that press conference. I believe, maybe I'm reading it wrong, I think he has been thinking about retirement a lot longer. And that's where I think I'm going to be a little more stirred on the fact that I think he did, in some ways, make the wrong decision retiring this late. Because he made a mention when he was talking about T.Y. Hilton. He said something along the lines of, after he had that injured shoulder, I believe it was the years where he barely played.
2017.
Jacoby Brissett played a lot of the year.
Right.
He said something, and I wish I could go find the quote. He said something along the lines of, when I was evaluating whether I wanted to play football anymore, I thought one of the reasons I wanted to keep playing was to throw to my best friend, T.Y. Hilton. That was 2 years ago. So I'm thinking every single offseason he's thought about retiring. And my only thing is, maybe you don't do it before the draft, which would obviously be the best case because then the Colts could trade up for a first-round pick, grab a quarterback, maybe grab Dwayne Haskins, Daniel Jones, Kyler Murray, somebody like that, where then, you at least have a competition between a proven, solid average quarterback and Jacoby Brissett and a rookie. But that's different. That's way in April. I can't imagine you making a decision. But at least before training camp, or maybe before all the preseason games, make that decision before. I'm going to put a little bit of slack on Andrew Luck for making this decision so late, because I think there was some giveaways. I think he has been thinking about retirement a bit longer than he's even admitting.
Right. Listen, regardless of what our opinions are, Andrew Luck at the end of the day was thinking about himself. And, listen, there's Colts fans right now who are trying to sell their season tickets because they're saying, well, without Andrew Luck, we're not going to be competitive, and I don't want to pay hundreds of even thousands of dollars to go to games, and my team is probably not going to be successful. So there are so many different factors going into this, but at the end of the day, I think we have to take a step back and recognize that Andrew Luck made the best decision. Right, he is a person.
He's not a commodity. I know with athletes get treated like that as well, as that they're almost toys.
Well, of course. I mean, listen, many news networks, sports networks, who were obviously having this conversation for the last couple of days, also brought up the fact of, fantasy football was right afterwards. And it's like, listen, we have to take a step back and say, this guy is human. He made the best decision for himself and for his family. And like you mentioned, his wife is pregnant and he wants to be there for his wife and for his future child. So it's very, very tough, even though you do bring up great arguments about maybe, yes, he should have done this in advance and given this franchise a better opportunity to be successful. Listen, I think that he was trying so hard to stay in it. And I think he was like, all right, I'm going to go through the rehab process again. And we do have to be mindful of this. At the beginning of training camp, Andrew Luck was completely healthy, to our knowledge. He injured his calf during training camp.
That's brutal.
So it's not like he was going into this offseason already injured. Yes, he was probably rehabilitating his shoulder and going through rehab, but he was out there throwing. He was practicing with his teammates. He got injured during training camp, and I think that was kind of just like the final.
It's a good point.
Kind of the final straw on like, oh my gosh, how many more injuries can I take? Like, I can't just go through one offseason being healthy and being out there with my teammates. So I think that was the nail in the coffin and the ultimate deciding factor to where he was just like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. My body cannot take it. I have to step out.
Yeah, I do want to make one more comment, because you did make a good point that if he did in fact get hurt in training camp, that does change it a little bit. I just still think he gave it away during that press conference. I don't know why nobody else is saying this. I think he gave it away that he's thought about retirement the last couple of years, and then he decided to retire essentially at the worst possible moment. Besides maybe game time before week one, I think this is probably one of the worst times he could have decided. But I do want to make a comment, one more comment, and just play devil's advocate with the whole fantasy football season tickets thing. Okay, and I just want to point out this. And yes, I do. I agree. This guy, he's a human being. He makes a lot of money. His wife's pregnant. He's been injured. Probably he's hurting a lot more than any other American. He's probably in the 1% as far as both the money he makes and both how hurt he is on a daily basis.
I don't think probably he is
No,
the
that's what I'm
1%
saying.
in both of those
100%.
categories.
So looking at it this way, I get all that, but there's a lot of people that don't make that type of money. And there's a lot of people that will spend their life savings on season tickets because the Colts are finally really good again. Not anymore, but before the season and after last year's great playoff run and great season, a lot of people are pouring a lot of money into the Indianapolis Colts. I made a joke about people from Indiana not having a lot to do. I think that even adds to the element. There's not a lot of things to do in Indiana, period. So people are putting a lot of money into the Colts, into the Pacers, into Notre Dame football. And when something like this happens, that affects a lot of people. If people are in these giant fantasy leagues where they're throwing hundreds of dollars down, and this weekend was the biggest weekend for fantasy football drafts, and you draft Andrew Luck, and all of a sudden you essentially just lost those $100 because the more than likely your team's probably not going to be good enough because you drafted Andrew Luck so high. So I'm just playing devil's advocate. I don't agree with it, and I'm not a big fantasy football guy. I play it essentially to have something to do on Sundays along with watching the games, and then a lot of times when the Cardinals start, I don't even pay attention to the rest of the league and I don't look at my fantasy team. So, but there is the element of this. There's a lot, the broadcasting network for the Colts is going to lose viewers. The stadium is going to lose. I'm just saying, there is a lot of stuff. There's a lot of common, normal people being affected by this negatively because of how late he made this decision. And that I just want to bring that up. I don't necessarily agree with everything I actually just said right there, but I do want to play devil's advocate for the Colts fans and the people out there that are angry that Andrew Luck did retire at this time of the season.
No, listen, you make valid points.
Yeah.
I totally understand that.
No, it is a flip-flop decision. No, there's negatives and positives to the whole thing, and that's why we want to talk about it so bad today, too.
Exactly. But listen, at the end of the day, fantasy football will never, ever, I repeat, ever rule and or decide a player's future and or what a player does on and off the field. So, unfortunately for those season ticket holders, for those fantasy football players who drafted Andrew Luck, it's kind of just like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're going to have to move on.
You're going to have to trade a wide receiver for a
Call the Colts headline if you would like to get a refund.
Yeah.
I believe there's a player on the Jaguars who was a former Indianapolis Colt, or I'm not sure if he played at Notre Dame, but I quickly was reading this report that he said that he was willing to purchase some season ticket holders tickets off of him and then donate them to local hospitals for children. So, there could be a potential shining light to this if there are fans who are looking to give up their season tickets. So, nonetheless, Andrew Luck has officially retired from the NFL. His locker is emptied out, and now he can focus on the rest of his career with his wife and his child that is soon to come.
What crazy news to happen over this weekend.
Right.
Because, like we said, we're going to record our NFL predictions right after this, not live. We're going to do it on tape. But this throws a whole wrench in the AFC South. Like, it's crazy.
The division is now wide
open.
And
we're not going to talk about that right here on this just live edition because we're going to go in depth on that to the predictions. It'd be a waste of your time. It's not worth it. Just wait. In the next couple of days, you'll hear our analysis on the whole AFC South. I do want to say two things. I do want to ask you, this is a dumb question. Someone that actually is watching this live, it brought this up, and it's I'm in the professional wrestling world. I follow all that stuff. There is a new league coming out next year that is run by Andrew Luck's father. Jared, what is your on a scale of 1 to or what percentage scale of Andrew Luck moving to the XFL? This is his way of getting.
I don't even know why you're asking that question. Andrew Luck makes over excess of $20 million a year.
Nothing's like playing for your dad's league, though. right?
And making what, like $500,000 a year? I don't know.
Vince McMahon has a lot of money. He's putting a lot of money in this. I think they'll be able to.
Those players are not going to be making the salaries that NFL players will be making. I'm not saying they never will, but in the first season, Andrew Luck is not retiring to go play in the XFL,
I agree with
which
you,
will be an even more physical sport than the NFL is. The XFL, its whole premises and purpose is to be more exciting, have bigger hits, and bring back the old school way of football. That is basically what McMahon is trying to do. So, hell no, Andrew Luck, the guy who's been hit the most since he's been in the NFL, is not going to go to a league where he's going to get hit even more.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that makes zero sense. I get what you're saying.
This is not even my opinion.
The correlation with his dad obviously being a part of the XFL, I see what you're saying.
I have something. Yeah.
But no, if Andrew Luck does that, then I'm sorry, he is not smart.
Then we're
he
lighting
is
him
dumb.
up. We're lighting him up.
Then we can light him up.
Yeah, and then so I just want to bring that up. So you hear that, Ryan? That nobody believes that he's going to the XFL. That was essentially for one person, but. And the other thing, and we can leave the podcast on this or whatever. If you guys want to feel better about certain people drafting Andrew Luck in the fantasy draft, I did find out that quickly after Andrew Luck retired, it was known that O.J. Simpson had drafted Andrew Luck 10 minutes prior. 10 minutes prior to him retiring, I saw a video of him complaining. So if you want to feel better about it, OJ drafted Andrew Luck a couple minutes before he retired. So
there you go.
That's
how we're gonna end.
We're gonna end the podcast with OJ Simpson.
Just like that. So Andrew Luck is retired. OJ Simpson is pissed off. What else is new? We're going to sign off right now. We will be recording an NFL prediction show, giving you a prediction of every single team, every division, every conference, all the way up to the Super Bowl. And within the next few days, that will be up on Facebook and YouTube. So you can check that out. You can see where we think your favorite team will finish this season. But for now, we're signing off. I'm Jared Smith.
I'm Nenad.
And this has been a special edition of the Cover 2 podcast.